And joining me now is Ian Rintoul, who's from the Refugee Action Coalition. Ian, as you heard, thanks very much for coming in, by the way. As you heard, the deal seems to be close, hasn't been signed yet. Are you heartened by the fact that the Australian government does seem to be pushing very hard for human rights assurances for these 800 people?
Not at all, actually. There's been a lot of focus on the appalling conditions for asylum seekers in Malaysia. But
how are they going to be appalling?
Well, people die inside the detention centres with unhygienic conditions at the moment. At the moment, people have no status.
How many deaths have there been in the last year?
In the last year, I couldn't say. It'd probably be around between 6 and 10, looking at the average, because there's been about 1,300 over the last 10 years.
And how do you know that's not from pre-existing conditions and is due to the actual condition in the detention centres?
Well, the reports are very authoritative reports, both from the Malaysian NGOs and from things like Amnesty International and the UNHCR. I don't think there's any dispute about the rotten conditions in the detention centres, or the fact that people don't have status, so that they don't have any legal status as asylum seekers or refugees. So there's no access to health, no access to education.
But the fact that the UNHCR has also got into this and voiced its concern, surely this is just pushing the deal to be more concrete?
It is pushing a deal to be more concrete. The problem is that the government is actually violating the rights of the 800 they're sending back, regardless of the conditions in Malaysia, and that's certainly the focus that we put. The thing for us is not what's going to happen to them in Malaysia. That's bad enough, but they shouldn't be being sent there anywhere. Australia is a signatory to the convention. Sending them back is the first aspect of violating their rights as asylum seekers.
Do you think there's any way this deal can be stopped?
Yes, I mean there's a massive growing opposition in Australia. There's serious opposition in Malaysia itself. I think there's lots of conditions which neither the Malaysian government or the Australian government have actually dotted the I and crossed the T's on yet. And we've got the legal action in Australia, which we haven't seen the end of. I mean, I'm very hopeful that the legal action which has been taken is going to put a halt, make a legal injunction against the removal of anybody until those High Court matters are resolved.
The legal action, though, does seem to be about a discrepancy or a loophole because it's splitting up a particular family. Is that really going to be able to be applied to the 800 as a whole?
As I understand that particular thing, no, but I think we are hopeful that we will see legal action which will question the ability on what legal grounds the government has to actually hold people for the purposes of deporting them to a third country.
Okay, now you were at that quite dramatic protest at the University of New South Wales yesterday. You said to me earlier that you yourself were pushed out. Do you think it's helpful when people hold up posters calling Julia Gillard a racist?
I think people have to confront the reality, and I think Julia Gillard is racist and is implementing a racist policy.
You seriously think that?
I think there's no doubt that the refugee policy that the Australian government is presiding over is racist. I think it's widely accepted. I mean, how do you actively discriminate against people who are from Kurdistan, from Iran, from Iraq, and other places without avoiding that kind of label? But the point is not whether she's a racist. The point is that the policies that she's implementing, we've got over 6,000 people now in detention. We've got a policy which is every bit as bad as Howard's Pacific solution, and I think that's the stark reality that people are confronting. We got rid of a Howard government, we've got a Labor government which has gone down exactly the same road.
Some refugee advocates believe that Nauru is a more humane option than Malaysia. To you, is there such a thing as a more humane option?
No, there's no choice between Nauru, and I know
so one isn't better than the other.
And I don't. How do you sort of chop up the question of human rights? Then I think there is no choice between Nauru and Malaysia. There's no choice about offshore processing. Offshore processing has to end. Australia is the biggest island in the region which has got the capacity to process and resettle.
Given that your position, and I agree the position of many people, is just absolutely opposed to us keeping asylum seekers in detention centres and also sending them offshore, do you think, given the policy that the government currently has, there is any way to deal with this issue humanely?
There is a way of dealing with humanely, but the Labor government has got to step back from the Howard path of refugee bashing. They had the opportunity when they got rid of Howard in 2007. They didn't seize that opportunity. It's not too late to seize that opportunity, and there are tens of thousands of people who would welcome the Labor Party stepping away from the Malaysian deal and mandatory detention.
So just briefly, what is the humane way which also discourages people smugglers in other parts of the world?
I don't think it's a question of discouraging people smugglers, and that's one of the problems. The government starts with people smuggling model. There is no such model. There's a question of asylum seekers' rights. If they stand for those rights, then there is a humane solution.
Okay, Ian Rintoul, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for coming in on ABC News 24.
Thanks, Jen.